What if the future of media isn't it about saving journalism, but subsidizing it? In a year without political advertising, without a major election cycle, without the Olympics, the very elements many broadcasters depend on, one of the largest media companies in the world still posted record revenue and profit, not by accident, not by luck, but by design. In its latest annual letter, Hearst makes something unmistakably clear. The center of gravity has shifted. Today, nearly 60%, that's 60% of its profits come from not newspapers, magazines, or television, but from B2B data, software, and analytics businesses. At the same time, the company is making a full-scale push into generative AI, calling it Job One across the enterprise. So this isn't just a story about one company's success. It's a story possibly about a new blueprint. Joining me today, David Carey, Senior VP of Public Affairs and Communications at Hearst. David, here's what AI says about you. And you can tell me if it's totally wrong, but it says, David, you work directly with leadership across one of the most diversified media companies in the world, spanning newspapers, television, magazines, and an incredibly powerful portfolio of data software and analytics businesses. Does that kind of describe what you would say your ecosystem at Hearst and who you guys are? Or you can give me the elevator pitch if you want, sir.
Yeah, I guess I would, and thank you again for having me, and want to thank you for the important role you have in sharing best practices and ideas across the industry during a time of great transformation. And so Hearst is a media and information company. And so before it was in vogue and before people started thinking about alternative revenue streams, Hearst has been on this path for decades. In fact, if you go back to our founder, William Randolph Hearst, editor and publisher, 140-year-old enterprise, Hearst, 139-year-old enterprise. And so these two great organizations that have seen so much over their lives. But Mr. Hearst spoke about the company being alarmingly enterprising. And so, and the idea that the company for years and years and decades has always found new areas to expand into, adjacencies that were relevant. In fact, business successes that only came back to reinforce maybe some of the businesses we've been in from a longstanding basis. So I guess, in terms of your original kind of introduction, I would say for the corporation, this isn't one of subsidy. This isn't one of a successful B2B business underwriting, if you will, the consumer media business. This is part of an ecosystem of an organization that is incredibly financially strong and gives the businesses the confidence to take risks, the ability for the center, the corporation, to make investments and acquisitions. And so, and something that has been organic to us for decades and decades. It's perhaps a story that's unique to Hearst, and it's one that I'm very proud to be able to share in venues like this, and large and small.
All right. If journalism is no longer the primary driver of money, what does this mean for the future of journalism itself? That's what we're going to dig into when we get the story behind Hearst's transformation. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hello. My name is Walter Hussman. Our family has been in the news business for over 100 years. Journalism includes two parts: reporting the news and providing opinions. But in recent years, there's been too much opinion appearing in news reporting. This has eroded public trust in news reporting to the lowest level of any U.S. institution. To address this, we started a nonprofit, the Center for Integrity in News Reporting.
The Center for Integrity in News Reporting, CFINR, is on a mission to rebuild public trust in journalism, one newsroom and one classroom at a time. We champion the effort to have news organizations and journalism schools create and prominently display their own clear, concise statements of core journalistic values. Learn more by visiting the Center for Integrity and News Reporting site at cfinr.org.
All right, David, you did discuss the big picture here. So what does the future of a media company look like when journalism, as I just said before the commercial, is not the primary driver of profit? Is that the new model, at least that you see or the company sees?
Well, again, as mentioned, what started as maybe purely media becomes media and information. We don't own airlines. We don't own soccer teams. We don't own restaurant chains. We own other businesses that where the accuracy of the information helps their customers make very big and important decisions. And in that way, it's very much a kindred spirit to the traditional way of defining journalism. And so as you think about what makes a successful company today, you need a lot of revenue streams. Let's just take Amazon, for example. People think of Amazon as making all of its money from the retail operations, those boxes, Mike, that show up at your door probably more than you would like. But the truth is, Amazon makes its money from AWS, Amazon Web Services, and increasingly from its advertising business that it sells against all of its consumer platforms. And so, and in fact, the retail business is a break-even-ish business. And so I think it's true for most organizations. You do need exposure to a lot of different revenue streams in order to be successful and confident about the future. So that's very much the case at Hearst. You know, I'm sitting here today in the Hearst Tower. If you've been to the Hearst Tower, it's a remarkable metaphor for the corporation. The base of the building is a 6-story building constructed by William Randolph Hearst in the 1920s to house the International Magazine Company. That was the building I worked in when I came out of college, on the 4th floor in a small interior office. Today, it's a 44-story skyscraper. The addition put on by Norman Foster opened up about 20 years ago. And so the building, again, is a metaphor for what this traditional base and this kind of gleaming, ambitious future reaching for the sky. And so in all that we do, we're respectful of the businesses that brought us there. We're still in all of them, but we're always finding ways to diversify the company to strengthen the overall organization.
I'm going to editorialize because it's my own show and I can do whatever the heck I want. But you do listen to the show. You made that clear. You know that we are very pro the mission of journalism in this 250-year-old Madisonian experiment. We believe truth to power.
Yes.
To some, and again, this is me editorializing, and as we report on it, it's become a pain in the butt. I mean, you can see that they're thinking beyond that mission. You mentioned William Randolph Hearst, the history. Does that permeate still through the company? Do you guys still see, regardless if it's not your top revenue stream anymore, one of the things that Hearst does is still do quality enterprise journalism for the communities they serve?
Oh, we very much believe that. And so this is a company that across all of our business units does have a mission orientation. The role, of course, of local journalism is to, as you say, keep, local leaders accountable to serve the communities. This is true across our local TV business and beyond. And so we very much believe that, and we take it very seriously what that role is. We do know that increasingly to engage those audiences require more and more forms of storytelling, right? If what had initially been the physical newspaper delivered in the morning or the afternoon to you, and then becomes a website, and now becomes the role of what you do across social media. And so how you engage those audiences in fulfilling your mission, changes, almost every single day. But we very much believe that. And I do think that when we've made acquisitions in the newspaper space, the belief is that Hearst would be a good owner because we'll prioritize the number of journalists that are in the newsroom and that we'll make those investments. And so I think we are maybe unique to the industry in our ability to do that. And again, that is a function of that the parent company, as you recounted through Steve's letter, has been engaged in this decades-long diversification that has worked amazingly well. The company's had very good instincts. Hearst is an organization that really prizes dexterity. We're able to manage all these businesses with just a handful of people in leadership, but really very strong operators that lead each one of our divisions.
Okay, I'm going to go for that third rail in the industry today, AI. You guys call it job one. This is an industry that some are saying, don't trust it, want to maintain the jobs, the integrity. You guys are full-throated, according to this letter, into using AI across the company. Is that about efficiency, or is that just about that we have to embrace this technology to stay competitive? What's going on?
Well, I think that focus is much more around productivity than using AI to create content. So if we talk about our newspaper businesses, for example, how can AI be deployed? One, it's employed from an advertising sales standpoint to qualify clients and leads in terms of are they worth a certain level of time or investment. It's very much deployed across our subscription management business and understanding and being able to identify inflection points for individual subscriber relationships and when that person may or may not attrit. And it's employed to help the newsrooms around research, especially around kind of local government filings, of which there are often enormous amounts of information. But it's not being used to create content per se. And so we do think that we look at this first and foremost as a productivity tool. When I speak to young people who are often fearful about AI, I remind them when I got my first job at Hearst 40 years ago, is if I wanted to set up a meeting that had 5 people, I had to call 5 people and set that up. If we wanted to do a follow-up, we had to put the things in the mail for people. And then at one point, I got the very important job of manning the fax machine, this wonderful technology. And so just imagine how if we had to go back to the tools that I had in 41 years ago, how inefficient we would be. And potentially, if we fast forward 10 years from now, people will look at how people spent their day doing their jobs and would find it to be, almost laughable. So we do think that first and foremost, this is a way to drive much more productivity, to get much closer to individual subscribers, individual advertisers, and analyzing their opportunity and potential. But the businesses are not using AI to let's only have 2 people in a newsroom and generate most of it via AI. We've all read about the challenges of that. But we do think across our large base of employees that they can contribute more and they can learn important skills at the same time that they'll be able to use throughout their careers.
So this dovetails to where you say in the letter the need for speed. In your view, what is the biggest risk now for media organizations? Moving too slowly? I mean, and again, I go back as far as you. I was my first mission, my breakout role nationally was to help try to aggregate classifieds. It was a company you might have remembered called Ad One. I was their troubadour going in trying to this is when Billy Morris was president of the NAA and we was screaming we should be aggregating our classifieds, but we didn't. We let that go because we didn't move quick enough. Is that old expression? Who was it? It was Guy Kawasaki who said, was it at Apple, we ship it, then we fix it? Is that a Hearst mentality now? Move quick, and then figure it out as we go? What does this need for speed mean?
Well, let's be clear that, we'll call it a big battleship, and we're surrounded by speedboats of entrepreneurs that every day are looking to create versions of what we do and maybe do it different and faster and less expensively. And we might not worry about the person A or B in one speedboat, but if there's thousands of them. And so we think a lot about kind of startup mentality. We think a lot about the risks that startups do as they pivot and evolve their organization. And so, if you are an entrepreneur and you get funding, and there's a lot of funding around AI, you want to go out and try to mimic the products and services of big organizations. The famous book by Clay Christensen, The Innovator's Dilemma, speaks to it all, right? Sometimes big organizations can be too wedded to own orthodoxies to innovate, and newcomers come in and steal that market. And so those are good things for us to think about. And I do believe that, and this is coming from Steve, that we do want a fast pace of innovation. We do want a fast pace of experimentation across the organization. Not all of them are going to work, of course. But we do think that even if they fail, you'll learn from failure that may open the doors to something more successful. So all of our businesses are finding ways to improve workflows, identify new audiences, create new products. And we have to be leaning into this because if we're not, I can tell you thousands or tens of thousands of small companies that want to be the Hearst of tomorrow are doing so. And we're not going to win. We're not going to sit here, even though it might not be you and I 20 years from now. We won't have the same proud story to tell if we're going to wait for others to innovate first and for us to be able to learn.
You talk in the letter about still wanting to be deeply committed to consumer media, newspapers, magazines, television, kind of the heart, the face. But yep. in the letter, Hearst says that the magazines are becoming most challenging. Can you just define that? As a publisher of a magazine, where are they in that ecosystem? And do you still see a future for some of those brands?
Yeah, so I ran the global magazine group here for a number of years. I was publisher of the New Yorker for some time, and so the magazine business is my first love, if you will. Hey, there are macro trends that are tough for the magazine business. First of all, when it comes to national advertising, in terms of digital advertising, Google plus Meta plus Amazon retail media plus the other retail media organizations plus streaming services today control 83% of all digital advertising, leaving 17% for all intentional publishers. They have to for their share. And then from a consumer time and attention standpoint, the story of the last couple of years has been the ascendancy of these creators and influencers, these individuals who amass massive followings. Of course, Mr. Beast being the largest one, but even Alex Cooper and Call Her Daddy, that has probably more powerful than most longstanding magazines or media brands serving young women. And so it is a time where it is a real fight for consumer time as well as from advertising. Newspapers have had, by being local businesses, newspapers have had a fewer competitors and maybe a bit more ability to drive higher subscription revenue than magazines. And so this has been going on for some time, is the great reinvention of the magazine business model, the role of vertical video, the role of them. If anything, when I got into the magazine business, the old line of the magazine business, maybe mass media overall, is you had to be some things to all people. You kind of lightly engaged big audiences. Of course, if you think of the ABC, CBS, NBC days, that was very much the case. Today, the winning model is you flip that around and you are in the all things to some people. You are super serving an individual niche or passion. Yeah. And that gives you authority, that gives you pricing power. We have this fantastic business I mentioned, Bring a Trailer, which is a business serving people who are in the market to buy a collectible car or dream of owning a collectible car one day. And for those individuals, Bring a Trailer is this absolute Bible and this great community. And I think that's a great example of what all media businesses need to have today. Total authority in their space, super serving individual niches and passions that are connected to how people see themselves.
All right. Now, obviously, most of my audience for this show is local regional publishers. We have the CEOs and all that and people at your scale. So I need you to put on a different hat for me. With your 40 years of experience at this very successful heritage media company, if today, sir, you were asked to run a local media company, for some reason, your wife said, let's just go move to this small town. And what advice would you give someone running a local news organization today from what you've gleaned from Hearst? And hopefully that's not a loaded question. I've given you some time to think about it. But what advice would you give that local publisher struggling to find that revenue and that sustainability model?
Yeah. So listen, my hat's off to all, kind of local publishers. And boy, I'm fearful of offering any advice to people that are in those trenches. But I would say that overall, in order to win in media, is you have to really understand what drives your audience. And it's not the same. And it's not, bringing the tablets down from the mountaintop and the audience will like it. It's really paying attention. So is it local sports? Is it local government? Is it, as one of our newspaper publishers said to me when I asked, what do people rely on you most for? And they said, our restaurant coverage. What's new? What's happening? And for a lot of people, the way they celebrate the good life they enjoy is they go out to dinner and they go out with friends and they go out with family members. And so if you have to understand intimately what really makes your audience tick, and from there, you think about, are you doing a great job of serving that, or are you following, priorities that may make sense to you, but may not necessarily make sense to the audience that you're going after? And so it does feel that that is kind of job number one. And I think it does vary by market, and it varies by, are there a lot of competitors in your market, or regrettably, are there no competitors in your market? And so I think, like anything else, is what does your audience want, and how does that connect back to what we're trying to do?
David Carey, Senior Vice President of Public Affairs and Communications at Hearst, someone who has done a lot within the walls of that company. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for unpacking that amazing letter, and thank you for being a part of our ecosystem, listening to our shows and keeping an eye on our content as well. We appreciate you being part of the show, sir.
An honor. And again, my hat's off to you for what you do to educate audiences around opportunities. And I'm grateful to tell the great story of Hearst. And so it's a true privilege to be here.